The topic of the most recent episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored was Charlie Kirk's massive memorial in Arizona, where Kirk's widow, Erica, publicly forgave her husband's murderer. And then the sitting president of the United States publicly declared that he hates his political opponents and does not wish them well, which presumably means every Democrat in this country, 50% of this country. So this debate became a total shit show with MAGA's hypocrisies and double standards thrown back in their face, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to play. This whole thing is wildly entertaining and very interesting. It's 56 minutes long. You should check it out on Piers Morgan's channel. It features Tim Miller of The Bulwark, a never-Trump Republican, and Waja Ali, who is a progressive journalist. He's a commentator, political commentator, and friend of the show. And they're up against Eric Bolling, formerly of Newsmax and Fox News, and Kari Lake, whose craziness is, her reputation for craziness precedes her. So we're going to play some of these clips, starting with this one here.
It's a bit of a clue.
Can he answer your question, Piers? You asked him why was he a scumbag yesterday by live tweeting and saying horrendous things on Charlie Kirk's memorial.
That was Kari.
Yeah,
Kari,
no,
listen,
I
lying is a sin in
that.
Christianity. Kari, lying is a sin in Christianity. So let me respond. Let me respond.
No,
I
called you that. And why
I also
did you
believe
do
in
that
Jesus,
yesterday?
and Jesus doesn't like liars. All right, now let's listen to this real quick. The person who used the word scumbag, and this is where I'm going to say I defended Charlie Kirk because he is a free speech maximalist. In his life, Charlie Kirk used his words to mock the living and the dead. He had every right to. He used the word scumbag to describe George Floyd, who was murdered by a cop. He had every right to. He said MLK was an awful person. He has every right to. He said he was against the Civil Rights Act. He had every right to. Charlie Kirk would also agree with me and other Republicans right now, including Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, other conservatives, or those who are loved by conservatives like Tim Dillon, Ben Shapiro, in that the president of the United States, President Trump, the leader of the country and the leader of MAGA, should not abuse and use his death to do what? Abuse his powers to cancel critics like Jimmy Kimmel. I think Charlie Kirk, in his words, with his life, if we look at what he said, would say, you know what? My critics can debate me, they can mock me. His producer said that Charlie Kirk actually enjoyed South Park criticizing him, and that South
but that
Park
wasn't my question.
So that's a really good point by Waja Ali, which I really appreciate, which is that Charlie Kirk publicly stated to effectively be a free speech maximalist. I don't think he's ever went so far as to say that he was a free speech absolutist, but Charlie Kirk said all sorts of incendiary, inflammatory things about all sorts of people and targets, Democrats, Democratic politicians, liberals, progressives, George Floyd, who was brutally murdered by a police officer. So he didn't believe in hate speech. He didn't believe that you had to be particularly civil in your speech. He didn't, believe that you couldn't be incendiary. And so as Piers Morgan and Kari Lake and Eric Bolling are really upset with the fact that Waja Ali, during Charlie Kirk's memorial service, was responding with quotes of Charlie Kirk himself, wasn't attacking him, just taking quotes of Kirk. They thought that that was indecorous and uncivil. But what Waja is trying to do is say, well, listen, I'm just simply practicing Charlie Kirk's standard of speech. And if you don't have a problem when Charlie Kirk does it, then you really have no room to stand on when I reciprocate. And I think that that was a fairly compelling point that, Charlie Kirk didn't believe that speech had to be tasteful. And so if Waja Ali, responding, basically live tweeting through Charlie Kirk's memorial in ways that you don't agree with, well, that's Charlie Kirk's standard. So I appreciate him pointing that out. Here's another clip.
Hang on, everybody. Hang on, just to be clear with Jahar. Like I said to you at the start, Charlie Kirk, would not be the one to complain about this. I was simply asking you that you wanted to tone things down. Do you not think, on a human level, it was just inappropriate? Never mind anything else. It showed a lack of humanity to just be bombarding on your X feed endless trash talk about Charlie Kirk as there was a memorial service to his life.
I praised Erica Kirk. I think one of the most beautiful aspects of yesterday, and I think another thing we'll all agree on, was Erica Kirk, a widow, using her platform at that moment to ask for what? Love and forgiveness. Now, if you were offended by me bringing out Charlie Kirk's own record and words against him, you have every right to. Charlie Kirk
No,
did
it was
that
your
in his life
timing.
against
I said
people
to
who
you,
were dead.
it was your
But
timing.
then Donald Trump, the president of the United States, what did he say? You quoted, I'm going to quote him again. This is Donald Trump right after Erica Kirk, in a humane Christian way, asked for forgiveness. You know what Donald Trump, the leader of MAGA, said? And I'm going to quote him. Charlie Kirk, did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them.
Yeah.
That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. He then spent the next 45 minutes at Charlie Kirk's funeral using and abusing his murder.
But what does that have to do with you?
You didn't answer the question.
What does that have to do with you, Wajahat? I simply asked you a question.
I'm perfectly fine.
Wajahat, I simply asked you, do you not think, on a human level,
I'm perfectly fine.
Do you think it was inappropriate for you, on a human level, to be...
Yes.
What? It was inappropriate or appropriate?
Charlie Kirk did the same thing in his life, and you guys treat him like Jesus.
Not during.
So, again, I appreciate the application of the standard. I really do. Charlie Kirk advocated for as maximal an interpretation of speech as possible. I would argue he didn't always live up to it, but he certainly publicly espoused that notion. And so it's ironic that the very sort of people who cheerled that, who celebrated when Charlie Kirk said incendiary, inflammatory things, are now clutching their pearls because the shoe is on the other foot. I think that's a fair thing to point out. Here's another clip.
And
I'll also point out, well, I'm thinking about it again, the bigger point too, and it comes up again, is that Donald Trump is the sitting president of the United States, and he has a greater responsibility than Wajah Ali, than Tim Miller, than Carrie Lake, than Eric Bolling, than even Piers Morgan, as influential as they all are, to use his rhetoric responsibly. And he chose Charlie Kirk's memorial to, again, undermine the message of forgiveness and grace, which was extraordinary from Erica Kirk. I mean, Jesus, I don't know if I could do that. Her publicly forgiving Charlie Kirk's murderer, her husband's murderer. You know, if the shoe were on the other foot for me, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if most people could do that. It was extraordinary. And some will say, well, she didn't believe it. Well, I'm not psychic. I'm not psychic. And let me tell you something. The incentive structure right now for MAGA would be for her to basically pull out the pitchforks and the torches and go fire and brimstone. And she chose not to. So for all I know, this is a sincere exclamation by her of forgiveness. And it is extraordinary. Donald Trump speaks after her, totally undermines, tramples all over the entire point. And he has a greater responsibility than anybody to watch what he says. And he chose to increase the temperature. Again, fair point by Waj to point that out.
David DePape, a Trump supporter, beat up Paul Pelosi. Charlie Kirk asked his followers to pay for his bail. He had every right to. Charlie Kirk mocked and ridiculed George Floyd, who was killed by a cop, choked to death. We saw the video.
This is nonsense.
He had every right to. And
so again, he's giving examples of all the times that Charlie Kirk used inappropriate, incendiary, uncivil rhetoric. And again, whether you agree with, listen, I condemn the violence against Charlie Kirk, and I stand beside that. What happened to Charlie Kirk was horrifying. He should not have been killed. But I didn't like Charlie Kirk. I didn't like his political views. I'm not going to lionize him or pretend that I didn't. And I think it's totally fair for people on either side of the aisle when it comes to discourse is to use the other side's standards against them and to test the consistency. So to, again, like for example, some people say, well, that's what the right is doing with the left when it comes to all these cancellations. If you think the left is engaging hypocritically with respect to cancel culture, I think it's fair for conservatives to ask questions and to test the logic. I think it's totally fair. Like, hey, listen, we don't live in cancel culture. We live in consequence culture. That's what you said. Now, I would argue the fundamental difference is that simply boycotting Jimmy Kimmel or calling for his cancellation as private citizens is, even if you disagree with it, that's one thing. But the federal government stepping in, as the FCC did, that is not what leftist cancel culture was. And that's an entirely different kettle of fish. But regardless, I think it's fair to say, hey, listen, how consistent are you in your principles? So if you're such one of these free speech warrior edgelords that we see on the internet all the time, that are particularly, I would argue, conservative, then are you okay with people like Waj or liberals and progressives in general exercising similar rhetoric? That's a fair point. And I appreciate the fact that he's bringing it up. Here's another clip.
All this. I'm checking out from all of it. Tyler Robinson, what he did was horrible, and he's responsible for his actions. People are responsible for their words if they're lying, and they should be called out for it. But like, why are we doing this? I mean, Megyn Kelly yesterday was tweeting at me. Carrie, we retweeted it. She said to me, you gleefully canceled all of us for 5 years. One of yours killed Charlie, and then you laughed at our pain. Carrie just said they did this. She used the word they. I didn't do any of that. I didn't laugh at Charlie. I didn't kill Charlie. I don't take any glee in his pain. It's really affected me emotionally.
It did. I mean, Tim Miller had to really humanize it. We all did. I think most people were just viscerally horrified. I remember, and again, I covered this, that I was stunned because I saw what happened to him. Number one. Number two, the person with whom Kirk was debating is a good friend of mine. So there was that on top of it. I mean, it's a horrifying thing. And it's also an attack on First Amendment rights and free speech spirit in terms of the idea of you being, physically assaulted or murdered for your speech. It runs contrary to what this country is supposed to be founded on. There's so many vectors by which this is incredibly impactful. Again, even though I didn't like Charlie Kirk, right? Tim Miller, was very emotional, empathetic about this when the story broke, as much as anybody, if not more. But we discussed in a previous video how what Megyn Kelly had to say, her breakdown, her meltdown at Tim Miller was deeply psychotic and disturbing. And she says, listen, we don't care what the Trump administration does. We don't care about any corruption. We don't care about any authoritarianism. We only care about defeating you because you did all these things. And Tim Miller's like, what the hell are you talking about? It was a true psychotic break. Good on him for bringing it up. Here's another clip.
Look, you just literally have increased the temperature. If you want to lower the temperature, and I think we all agree on this, Erica Kirk, what she said was the following.
I don't want to lower the temperature.
Forgiveness and love.
You missed
Donald
my
Trump,
opening comment.
wait.
I don't
Speaking
want to
of
lower
lowering the temperature, Donald Trump, I don't care if he's MAGA, he's the president. He's the president of all Americans. He could have and should have used that moment in front of the world to follow Erica's lead and just lower the temperature.
But you haven't.
What you have failed to do today is you have
with
increased
respect,
the temperature and attacking
Wajahat, let me just jump in. Let me just jump in, Wajahat.
Threat in America
let me just challenge you on that point.
And the DOJ just scrubbed it.
Wajahat, let me just.
If we want to keep our kids safe,
let me just jump in.
The problems, lower the temperature.
I'm hearing a lot of people. Destiny did this as well last week. A lot of people on the left coming on, and they justify their own behavior by using Trump, right? Well, if Trump's doing this, Trump's doing that.
This is what Donald Trump said. I hate my opponent.
You've read it already.
And I don't want the best for them.
You've read it already.
Then, as we know, he has asked Pam Bondi, his DOJ, to go against all Democrats. This is a man who is the president of the United States. Lower the temperature. And I also want to say, because facts matter, 2 weeks ago, there was no suspect. 2 weeks ago, there was no motive. Irresponsibly and recklessly, it was Donald Trump who took to the world stage and irresponsibly and incorrectly blamed the radical left. So what are we doing here?
Piers,
what we're doing here is reminding you. What I'm doing here is reminding you of what you posted during the memorial service.
Lower the temperature. Tweet that out.
You keep talking about lowering.
Love it. Listen, again, here's the problem with what Piers wants. Piers expects Waja Ali, Destiny, Tim Miller, probably Adam Mockler, Luke Beasley, any liberal or progressive content creator, no matter how successful or not, he expects more out of them than he does the sitting president of the United States. And that's really the heart of the issue. Donald Trump is the most powerful and important person on earth. His words and actions matter more than anybody. You could take every liberal and progressive influencer in the world combined, and they would still have less power and influence and therefore responsibility than Trump to lower the temperature. And it is perfectly fair for liberals and progressives and never Trump Republicans to say, hey, listen, stop grading Trump on a curve. It's irrational, it's stupid, it's counterproductive, and we all know it's hypocritical because if the shoe were on the other foot, you would never tolerate it. Trump has the highest obligation to get this right. Piers isn't calling it out. A lot of Trump supporters are not calling it out, and that's fair to criticize because they will always lose that debate. If you really care about lowering the temperature and you believe that people with influence have an obligation to do it, then that applies to Trump more than anybody. So it's a great point by Watch. And we're going to close with Tim Miller.
And it's like, no, they're not.
I hear what you're saying, Piers, and I promise I can answer. I got cut off when people were saying when Kerry was saying I was trying to Charlie for this. I just want to be 100% clear. I was making the exact opposite point. I think that everybody should be careful about their language and accurate. I don't support hyperbole and smearing people falsely. I'm not for that. Okay, but here's the thing. That same logic, right? That because somebody on the left has called Trump a Nazi, or because people have called him a fascist, that means they're responsible for this murderer. That same logic would rationalize any murder, right? I mean, Donald Trump uses the harshest language about his opponents. He calls them the enemy of the people. He's called them communists. He's called them fascists. He's used the word fascist. He uses extremely nasty rhetoric all the time. Would that justify a right-wing person killing a left-wing person? Of course not. No. And and that would be crazy to say that. So look, here's the thing: speech.
100%. There you go. And I love the fact that he brought that up. Listen, at the end of the day, you know, if people want to say that everybody needs to mind their rhetoric, that's fine. But there has to be one standard. Democrats have to mind what they say. Republicans have to mind what they say. And if you're not going to have that buy-in from, you know, the leaders of the political parties and the power players of the political parties, there's really no point. And I'll also say this, as somebody who is part of a party whom Trump and Trump supporters have called fascist and communist and Marxist and socialist, and, you know, like Marjorie Taylor Greene has publicly referred to the Democratic Party as a party of groomers and pedophiles. All sorts of heinous shit has been said about the Democratic Party. And I think that that's wrong because the facts are wrong. But if you genuinely believe, if you really believe that the Democratic Party is a communist party, I don't know how you would get to that conclusion, but if you genuinely believe it, you should be able to say it, especially if you're a political commentator. I think Donald Trump is an authoritarian. I think Donald Trump is a fascist. I think Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. And I'll continue to say that because it's true. And if Trump wants me to stop saying that, then he needs to stop acting like it. And I can say these things while also saying in a constitutional democratic republic with free and fair elections and rule of law, we don't have the right to, nobody has the right to engage in political or vigilante justice, no matter what you think the opposing side is. And so that's my position on this. I think that this was a very interesting and entertaining debate involving Tim Miller and Wajah Ali of the Bulwark. I think that Piers Morgan really got caught up in grading Trump on a curve just in real time and wanting Charlie Kirk and conservatives to be able to say whatever the hell they want, whenever the hell they want, but he doesn't want to reciprocate that same right or courtesy to the liberals and progressives in the world. And just the double standards are on full display. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.